Okay, so today we are looking at upgrading my main home computer, which I use for music recording and video editing mainly. I've had this iMac since late 2011, so it's getting long in the tooth. It has already had a number of upgrades along the way, starting with a push to 12 GB of memory. I've then added an external SSD drive, which can make a massive difference. This one is on Thunderbolt because the USB 2.0 ports of the iMac wouldn't cut it. And you can see here it makes complete difference between Thunderbolt and a standard external USB. Now you have an alternative here, which is to open up the iMac and change the hard drive for an SSD. A bit more of an involved process, however. So where that leaves us is with an iMac that works well, or very well indeed, with Garageband and a number of plugins like Pianotech, for instance, which I use heavily. And sometimes it does slow down and I do have issues, but that's quite rare, in fact. So very good there. Where it comes to video editing, however, it starts to become a bit more complicated. Now, iMovie works really well, even when you add a second camera on 1080p. But where you can see the limitation of the frankly abysmal graphics card from old is when you start to doing a little bit more. And you can see it here on the graphics. I mean, clearly we're not trying to play games here. However, when you start using Vinci Resolve, it becomes extremely tricky. In fact, any multicam video, even on quarter screen type processing, just doesn't work. And that's a bit of a shame, but nothing unexpected for a computer of that age. So what we do next here is to look at our various options to upgrade into a new computer that will both keep all the benefits we had on this very simple, straightforward music edition that we like, and that does better on video edition, in particular multicam. So we will be looking at 4 options here. The first one is a new iMac, not a very surprising choice here. All the more if you consider the number of Apple devices I've got in the home. Windows computers, great for work, but I'd rather keep them there. So what's good with the iMac? Fantastic screen, enough power, what looks like reasonably decent graphics card, and always this sleek integrated design. What's not so good, however, is the issue I'm facing now. I don't really want to be stuck if one component becomes obsolete more quickly. Also, there are still no affordable SSD drive options. Any upgrades need to be done at the start and they are costly. And I'd like to make use of that fantastic screen for other applications, for instance, if I'm home working. Next up is the Mac Mini, updated in 2020. Still a great design, small footprint, plenty of interfaces on the back of the device. It has a nice 7 core potentially, which is plenty of compute power. It is somewhat upgradable, at least you can change the memory. But the real showstopper here is the lack of a discrete graphics card, which means you would have to go with an external GPU if you wanted more graphics power, and that undermines the concept of a Mac Mini, and of course would be quite costly too. As we move up the scale of upgradability now, the next interesting option is a Mac Pro. So the Mac Pro 4.1 or 5.1, these are very old devices now, from pretty much 10 years ago. But they can be turned into a real computing beast, apparently. And they are quite affordable when you look on the internet, on eBay. There are lots of simple upgrades that are possible. You can add a new hard drive, you can change the graphics, you can add loads of memory. Of course, you can also upgrade the CPUs. It's still a nice design. It looks good. It's big, but it looks good. And the problem though is, do I really want to spend money in a 10-year-old computer? And then, of course, it's not also purely 100% plug and play. There's still some kind of messing around. Which graphics card will work? Will I get a load screen, etc. So it's not the perfect answer, but certainly it gives a lot more of optionality here. So a very interesting one. Which takes us to the fourth option now. And that is taking parts of what would normally go in a desktop PC and either run Linux or run macOS. So the good news here is you get more modern hardware, your latest chips, CPUs, graphics cards. It's probably the best value for money on a given spec. You can build it on demand. You've got pretty much infinite upgrade potential moving forward. Now, of course, there are quite a bunch of compromises here. Number one, it's going to be hard to have the look and feel of a sleek design of Apple, and that's something that I would rate. The second is, if you go down the Linux route, then you're going to be losing those key apps we were essentially going for. So Garageband is pretty much gone. There might be alternatives like Traction maybe, or something else. And if you go down the Hackintosh route, then I don't think it's for the faint of heart. It's potentially plagued with quite a number of compatibility issues. So quite a bit to think about here. So what about you? What would you do? Which configuration would you go for? Are there alternatives that we haven't mentioned here? In part 2, I will discuss which option I've selected and how it's working out for me.